you're no longer chasing what everybody else is doing. It's not always just about the stuff, the things. It's about you're really happy with the experience that you're gaining. Then your perspective shifts even further.
Welcome to another episode of Sell Me This Podcast. This week we host Matt Riddel and we dive into a fascinating conversation around the humanity behind sales and some of the trends that he's seen with his leadership coaching practice. We hope you enjoy. Welcome to another episode of Sell Me This Podcast. I am super excited to have a guest with me today, Mr. Matt Riddel. Matt, super fun to have you here.
Awesome to be here. I've been looking forward to this for a while, especially after you and I have been talking in the last several months.
Yeah. I feel like we've had a pre-podcast already. Like I made a joke that we probably should have put a camera right in here and recorded the preamble, which I feel like would be a moneymaker.
I think you should. I think that would make for just like really good clip content that you could pump out there because there's such great organic conversation that happens.
I think so.
Before the podcast.
I feel like we made, what was the joke that we made beforehand that it's kind of like a night at the Roxbury. It's the club outside the club.
Right. We're using that reference that the whole concept of like make the outside of the club look like the inside because you got to wait out there anyway, right?
Yeah, we can just make the actual podcast incredibly awkward and while we're just kind of twiddling our thumbs waiting to start recording.
Right.
And then just have the preamble be where the money's
Yeah,
at.
Talking about the weather.
Yeah.
Oh, what's up with you? Oh, not much.
Yeah.
What are you doing this weekend? Oh, the same shit as I did last weekend.
The stock market's
Oh,
doing some really
I just
cool
cursed.
things.
Can I not? We can't
You're
curse.
allowed to curse, yeah.
Oh, okay, good. It's a real podcast.
There's not too many children that listen to the IT podcast landscape.
You know, it's odd, and I think it's something that we all need to work on changing, Keith.
I know. I feel like we need to start them young.
We should.
A listener for life.
We should. Yeah. This is great. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm super excited. So for people that don't know you, I feel like you and I have known each other for many years. Why don't you give a little bit of an overview, who you are, where you came from?
Yeah, thanks for that. So you and I crossed paths several years ago, both in the, let's call it the enterprise IT vendor space. I was at a manufacturer or a vendor, and you were at a reseller that you had been at for quite some time and building up pretty significant services practices. So that's where you and I initially crossed paths. But, you know, I think very much in the vein of the discussions you've been having and the discussions that you and I have been having lately, there was a connection there and some alignment. And at that time, serendipitous as it was, and interesting how it reflects other parts of my life right now, that it's like, you and I didn't get to work together, I think, as much as we would have liked to and really crush a few things.
We almost worked together a lot.
We almost worked together a lot. There was a lot of opportunity that just didn't quite make sense. But now, you know, here we are several years later, that it's like, okay, well, there's other ways of working together, and that's kind of what's coming together. So I spent a lot of my life, really, I say that I'm a 20-plus year sales exec. And I really equate that all the way back to owning and operating a retail operation, through building up a financial practice as a certified financial planner. And then that somehow sold me into selling business analytics software with IBM to CFOs in Western Canada, which grew into more software sales and so on and so on and so on. And it's been a wonderful and storied career, but also like so many of us in sales that are facing customers or carrying a quota or really feel, I would say, a heavy burden of responsibility. I burned out and I wrung out. And that was kind of, call it late 2022, 2023. So I took an exit from IT altogether with an intention that I probably wouldn't be back. And through that journey, I got separated from my wife very amicably. We're best friends, but realized that we're not meant to be together anymore. I went down to Los Angeles for about 6 months of 2024. I spent a lot of time there kind of just exploring what I want to do, who I want to be. At the time, I was suppressing a lot of my business and sales acumen. But then I started to realize, well, there's a lot here that I have and great experience that I could pull from. And somehow I sort of fell into coaching people one-on-one. And it was a little bit of life coaching down on the beach in Venice and just making connections that way that people were started to pay me to do it. And that just slowly started to grow into an executive coaching practice that predominantly I work with managers, directors, C-level executives, just on maybe causing some sort of a shift, that there's stagnation in their career or their life. They're looking for some catalyst to personal and professional development. And so I work with individuals on a one-on-one private basis for that. As well, I was building a practice and you and I had talked a little bit about how can we make the sales community a little bit better? How can we help people become better listeners, be a little bit more active and curious in how they're approaching customer conversations? And so from that acumen that I started to pull, it was like, well, there's maybe some need for some sales coaching out there. And so I was looking at a lot of the reseller space that you and I have lived and worked in for a while, catered to some of that in some initial sales coaching of teams or individuals. And that got me thinking, well, what if I was to come back? What would that look like? And so there was a short list, but a very focused list of what was important to me, that I would come back into the industry as a sales executive. And it was the right people. So people and culture, of course. But really, that's deeper than just this punchline of people and culture are important. It's, am I going to be working with people that are still deeply invested in personal and professional growth? Because if they're not, well, then I don't know that I'll be elevated by that. And I don't know if I can elevate that. So that was one. The other thing is, I don't want to give up coaching. I love working with individuals, and I get a lot of fulfillment out of that. I think I've said to you kind of the 4 pillars of my coaching practice are inspiration, motivation, support, and accountability. And I love that that's a two-way street. So I wasn't willing to give that up. And I love going to LA, hence why I picked this.
You picked the LA background.
Right?
I love it. Yeah.
I have a great community, I even consider some of people their family. And so it was important to me to still be able to go there with frequency and live and work there, on a 4 to 6 week or couple month basis. So when a new opportunity came with people that I had worked with successfully before, leadership that I aligned pretty well with, and that I was able to have really good, candid conversations of what I'd like to help build, that opportunity showed up, and I said, okay, maybe the universe is just shining a spotlight on something here, that this is the right inflection point. This is the right path to come back in and take all these versions of me and everything that I've worked on over the years in my career, again, personally and professionally, and really put that to work in some way that I could be of service to myself and of others. And so that's kind of a long-winded Matt Riddel sales guy way of answering a very short question, but that kind of
I love it though,
and
I think that there's so much there to unpack. I feel like I have 100 questions already, and I want to make sure we get to all of it. But I think that I'd like to start off with the idea of that kind of coaching mentality. And so a lot of the most successful salespeople that I have come across aren't the DNA that you'd think, right? So I think that if you watched the movie, if you go back to like the Glengarry, Glen Ross, and like your Wolf of like the traditional sales movies, the persona is like, I can talk really well, I'm smooth, I have this kind of charisma, and I think that's actually not true, especially right now. Like most of the most successful salespeople that I know are the ones that listen, are the ones that are curious. But I think they kind of have behind it all this kind of coaching mentality with their customers. Yeah. And I'm really curious if you've kind of seen that connection, if that's something that you, or like a skill set that you've had to develop or build, or if, like, how did you build that coaching muscle?
Yeah. Okay. So a great question. Let me think about how to approach this. So I agree. I think I agree on all points, Keith, because
this isn't going to make for good ratings. We need vehement disagreement here.
Well, let me echo some of it and pull harder on some of those threads, because I think yes, there needs to be an aspect of coaching in sales with your customer. And again, I think that's a two-way street. I think that's how the relationships are built. But to get there, there needs to be a level of transparency and a confidence in transparency. I did a talk track and a little workshop on that recently, that it's like, there is so much more confidence when you just show up and you're like, look, this is what I'm here for. I'm genuinely here to help. Because, and even if you're coin operated, helping you puts money in my pocket. So I want to do more of that, right? Like, we all deserve to be profitable, but we all deserve to work well together, and we all deserve to show up and be authentic. I'm trying to avoid the buzzword of authentic right now because it is a bit buzzwordy, but that's the true sense of it. Just really be what you say you are and show up, and don't bullshit people because they'll see right through it. And if it's all about, getting the Lambo and the Rolex and showing up with an expensive suit and, the Jordan Belfortism and boilerisms as you described, like of the stereotypical ABC sales guy, I think people are just sick of it. And it's a veneer that is so transparent now. Nobody, unless you got a really slick product and you're already embedded in there, I don't think that's going to open doors. It's just going to be transactional.
Well, and I think that transparency, like, I love that you called that out, because a lot of the information too, like, is available, right? Like people do, and I think there's a Gartner stat where people, 70% of their decisions are already made up by the time they reach out to someone.
Right.
And so they're looking for someone to create an experience for them as they go from that 70 to 100%. And unlock those doors, make it fun for them, make sure that it fits with what they need, and kind of massage that last little piece rather than, show up with the brochure and kind of point at the 14 points on it.
Right. And I think that's exactly it. I use a lot of analogies.
It's okay. We're good.
Right?
We're good with analogies. Yeah.
And I always think about that. Like, I'm a gearhead. I love cars. But I've used this analogy with other people that even if you're not and you go to shop for a car, most demographics are going to do a level of research. Now it's just a question of how much research, how many YouTube reviews of this model have you watched. So to your point, by the time you walk into a dealership, the likelihood that you can or will know, maybe even as much as some of the product consultants, the salespeople, is pretty high. So what's the value that you're going to deliver? And I think if nothing else, honestly, if nothing else, Keith, you be compassionate. Just be kind. Because if a transaction is going to happen, then why not have it happen with somebody that you actually like to deal with? That it's like, I feel better when I'm around this person.
Yeah.
Right? So I think if you restore to the default of that as like even just compassion and showing up with a level of honesty and transparency, all you need to do is listen. That's all you need to do. I'm reminded of, like, I quote this Mark Twain quote frequently, that it's like, if you always tell the truth, you don't have to remember anything.
Yeah, you don't. That's really powerful. I think that it definitely makes sense. Well, you think the scenario, it's okay, well, I said this, and you all of a sudden have to think about this elaborate spider web of truths and half-truths and things you're trying to embed. And like, I love the idea that you talked about of being kind of candorous too, even about why you're there. And I know we've shared this joke before, but it's, the cold call that comes in that says, I'm not here to sell you anything.
What are you here for?
Why are you calling me?
Yeah. You and I have joked about this, and I've never been too punchy or gun shy. I would go all the way back to, when I was in financial planning. And I think this speaks to, sales too, of course, because the approach to how to get meetings. I think that as we gain more success as salespeople, we also think we need to be more clever. There's this, part of Stoic philosophy was, you don't need to build some complex contraption to just reach out and pick up the thing. It's there. Just use your hand. So as we gain more success, I think we try and be more complex in the way we're approaching customers and deals. And the truth is, ask for meetings, ask for business, ask for referrals. Listen, take notes, be curious, don't be judgmental. And eventually things come together. Sometimes it's a longer game that way. I'll give you that. I have had peers say to me, Matt, to your credit, you're less successful because of the things that you won't do. And at the time, I kind of winced, and now I suppose I take that as a compliment. Because one of the individuals who said that to me once before, good person, but they're no longer a salesperson. And they were very successful for a number of years, but if you do certain things, or you I don't want to say commit acts. That's not it. But I think if you approach sales and if you approach your customer with any sort of cloak and dagger, it doesn't have staying power. You and I have seen that both before in the industry with peers or even with myself, where I've made bad choices, and I thought, okay, well, this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to let the customer know one thing when something else is really going on and try and shield it. And that bit me and burned me, and it got me kicked out of the account. It's not something I'm proud of, but holy shit, what a lesson.
Well, yeah, you learn those lessons the hard way sometimes. And
sometimes you need to.
Yeah.
I think sometimes you need to learn them the hard way so that they stick.
Yeah,
the ones that you learn that are easy, I can't even think of one. I can't think of a single one.
Well, and I feel like I've told this story far too many times over my career, but I still vividly remember, my first like true B2B sales job. So before that, I actually did a stint in the financial services, like in university, I kind of wore a couple of different hats. And,
nice.
It wasn't my favorite thing in the world, but right out of that, I sold photocopiers. Like that was my first B2B sales job.
All right.
And I wear the Xerox training with a badge of honor, and I still remember.
You're at Xerox.
I was a Zeroid, I think is what.
That's a Zeroid. That's interesting.
I was part of the era where they still flew everyone out to Toronto for 2 weeks.
Oh, boot camp.
You did the boot camp. You did the live dial cold calls in front of a group of 30 of your peers.
What?
They'd put a phone in the middle of the room.
It's like a click farm.
And they would make you do a cold call on speakerphone in front of everyone.
Yeah, that's like this boiler room mentality. Now,
and
how successful is that?
I don't know. Like
I mean, you stayed with them, but
I think that it was some of the greatest experiences that I had.
Yeah.
Because the thing that it taught was not necessarily the fundamental sales skills. Like, in fact, some of the things that I learned, I probably would, I was always a little bit of the contrarian, maybe.
Sure. No, come on.
Yeah, believe it or not. But I think that the thing that it taught you was resiliency.
Yeah.
And, I will forever be grateful for the experiences. My patch was Northwest Calgary.
Okay.
Which is a really challenging patch if you think about the businesses there are doctors' offices, professional buildings.
It's all profcos.
And there is nothing worse than walking into a doctor's office. And at this point, I think they relaxed a little bit since then. But it was full suit and tie.
Full suit and tie. Oh yeah.
And it was 20-year-old Keith, so it was like the most like ill-fitting suit you could think of.
like David Byrne.
walk into the doctor's office, and try to get the time of the doctor as in a cold call while all these people are waiting. Like, I have a cold, and it's like, well, I'd like to sell you a photocopier. And so I think that level of resiliency and having to be quick on your feet was really important. But back to the story, there was this. My first proposal that I did, was at a church. I still remember the copier model, everything like that. And I told a mentor and who's now a close friend of mine, I got this. I'd seen him do it, and I was like, don't worry,
slam dunk.
And he's like, are you sure? This is you've been here for 2 weeks. And I remember going into the meeting. I had the proposal. We sit down. And I just repeat the same line over and over again for 3 minutes in a row. I was like, have you heard about our photocopier? Have you heard about our photocopier? And I was like, well, blank can take over. He actually knows more about it. And he looked me straight in the eyes and he goes, I think you got this.
I think you got this.
And he let me drown completely. And it was the greatest experience because he was willing to let me lose.
Yeah.
And I will never forget that moment.
I think I love that story. And tell me how you feel about it compared to the boiler room of, the cold call arena at boot camp. Which of those experiences was more valuable to you?
The second by far.
Okay.
And the reason is because I think that it appreciated the learning experience versus the playbook.
Right. And I think it's interesting. And I don't think one is better than the other necessarily. I think all sides are right, all sides are wrong. It's all about perception. But that cold call arena boot camp, I've done that a few times, right? And it's always I don't want to do that. And it's because of that. You feel so seen. You feel like you're under a microscope. You don't want to be judged.
Yeah.
And the situation you described where it's like, okay, well, this was a lesson learned in front of a customer. I found those ones exponentially more valuable to my growth. Now, I don't discount the resistance that comes from having to do the cold calls and be seen doing it and heard doing it. I think that's good growth, and I think there's an apt space for it. But I love even more like that, those stories of here's what went wrong, and if you have a recovery, great, and if you don't, well, what did you learn today?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think we ended up winning the deal too, which is
Sweet.
I think that I'm sure that the gentleman probably took a little bit of. He was probably quite nice to the young kid trying to figure it out.
And that's even the better, right? Is that if you can pull it off and win it outside of that, I think sometimes those lessons and those stumbling situations really help to bring shields down with a customer that they're like, you know what? I like Keith.
Well, I guess it goes back to your point. It was authentic.
Yeah. Genuinely authentic. It's like, I don't, you know what? I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm new, right? I'm the new guy, and I don't know where to go from here. Or you freeze up, or that happened early in my career a few times. It's happened even later in my career a few times. But I've learned how to, I think, roll with it a bit better. When you got a good SE and you're making a four-legged sales call, sometimes it was great. I know you had met Kyle McKay when he and I were working together, and he was great at making me look bad and I don't mean that in a deliberate sense or with any malice, but we would have so much fun with customers because I could say something and even whiteboard something. He'd be like, yeah, you know what, let's give everybody give Matt, a quick round because
Thank you for
he
trying.
did a good job. He's about 60% of the way, right? I'll just clean up all of this, and he would go and clean up my whiteboard and go over it, and it created this cadence that he and I were just fun to be around, and then customers wanted to be around that.
And I think there's something to that.
Yeah.
Because I think that you kind of almost create this club they want to be part of, right?
Yes. And this is the exact verbiage I've been using since being back in the industry. I'm like we have an opportunity to be disruptive and kind of be the cool kids. And all we have to do is just be ourselves and try and deliver good things for the customer. And be honest about it.
Yeah.
And it sounds almost salesy, even that tone or verbiage, but it's true. It's like we just want to do the right thing. Because if we do, we win. And if we win, we're profitable. So I do it all under no guise. Going back to letting people know what your intention is when you show up, especially in sales, is invaluable. How I built a significant book of business in financial planning, the first meeting was, let me explain to you how I get paid. And now all of a sudden, when people understand how much I make when I'm working with them in that capacity, I was very explicit about, look, this is exactly how my pay structure works. You're going to move this over. This is how much money I'm going to make. Here's my incentive to continue to work for you. This is why I'm doing it. And all of a sudden, shields would come down and be like, okay, now I understand what's in it for you. How are you going to help me? And I'm not saying show up and let everybody know what's in it for you, but a little bit, find ways to fabric that into the conversation. Weave it in there because it lets people know a little bit more about you. I think you become more familiar. People begin to trust you more. And you just have better conversations, and it leads to more and more business and more opportunities and more growth.
Yeah. And so I think that leads into a little bit about the Enviro story as well, which is, you've been focused on building your leadership development practice.
Yeah.
You've been, you need a little bit of time away. And so obviously it would have taken something special to kind of bring you back into the game.
Yeah.
So is it just the licensing that kind of brought you into Enviro, or what's the story that kind of put you back on the field, so to speak?
Okay, so I love the question because it's a really good discussion point. I wasn't that actively looking. You knew that. You and I had talked, and I said I'm kicking tires on a couple opportunities, and I had talked to a couple of vendors that, I knew the sales leaders at that, there could have been some opportunity, and it just didn't feel right. It wasn't just the licensing. I knew the licensing practice because I knew Steph Yakimitz. She's one of my best friends, and she is the license practice lead. She's building out the engine and hiring people to do that. But her and I had worked together before, and there was some magic in that. And so the opportunity of not just working with her and continuing down this licensing path, because I knew there's so much opportunity to have those discussions and help customers understand it better. Then enter the right leadership, which was with Sean Ambrose. He was an old friend. I had worked together with him before. And he and I shared a lot of the same vision around things. So that helped to pump it up a little bit more. And then I met the rest of the leadership team. I started to meet with other people in Vero and just kind of do a temperature check. And I don't know if you remember Stratiform years ago. Think Stratiform, not like 4.0. That's kind of where we're at. It's that kind of a culture. Everybody's, not only is everybody invested in each other, but we're invested in the customers. There's a lot of regular internal cadence, a lot of think tanking that goes on, and results that come from that. So being part of a small organization that has this strong collaborative culture that I knew some of the players that I'd worked well with already, and I aligned very well with, and that I had an opportunity to come in and contribute to. That was part of it. Like I wanted to say, okay, well, with some of our customer-facing technical people, they're actually implementing some of these larger scale projects in Azure. Let me work with some of them, maybe on some of their soft skills. Or is there an opportunity that as we grow our sales org, let me help and take on some coaching responsibilities of maybe some new salespeople. So there was a ton of opportunity, and all signs point to yes at Enviro, that it would align with where I want to continue to grow, and it would allow me to step back into a world with a little bit of a new perspective on it, and again that confidence and transparency of who I really am and how comfortable I am being that person right now.
Do you think the last couple of years has really shifted that perspective and that confidence?
Yeah, 180 degrees. I think, I tell people, I tell people sometimes about this book I've been working on, and I keep picking away at it. And it's not really a memoir. It's just this kind of collection of my experience when I had first separated from my wife. We were living in Victoria at the time. I drove down to LA, and I was just going there for a 5-week stay before what happened was I came back and we decided to separate, and I moved back there. But that initial 5 weeks, when I drove down, I drove myself down. I took 3 days down the 101, and the Oregon coast, all the way northern California, got turned around at Big Sur on the PCH because it was still closed, and went back down the 101, hooked back up with it. And I tell people that part of that story is because I think every mile of the 101, particularly that trip, I kind of lost myself on there deliberately. I'd go hours without listening to anything. I had a fat stack of podcasts lined up and a couple of great playlists. But I tell people I kind of went down there with a broken heart and left it open for 5 weeks. So to your question around, the change in perspective in the last couple of years, I think I needed that as the catalyst coming out of that initial burnout. That I needed to be vulnerable for a little while and just let myself kind of observe and take things in. And what that experience did for me, why I say it's like I had, this heart broken open and left it open. By the time I got to LA, I was talking with everybody I came into contact with. And that's part of how I made so many connections, good friends. I got embedded in, parts of the car community there. I got a great community of people in Venice that I keep in good contact with. And it taught me that this approach of just showing up and asking good questions and not trying to show up and intimidate or be cool or make people think that I'm more than I am. I think that comes from sales too. And even as I had more and more success previously, I think I kept thinking that I was elevating, and what I was doing was, one way I was setting the bar higher each time, and I was getting frustrated and stressed to try and reach it. And the other way is I wasn't really celebrating those wins and reflecting at all on what went right, what was really great, what I was grateful for about those big wins. I just kind of used it as fuel to be like, well, now I need to get the next big one. And if I'm not enough. So one of the things I've worked with a lot of people on, friends and coaching clients, and even just peers in the sales community, is like, celebrate those wins. Make sure you're taking care of that. Like, really reflect, find a way to record it by some means that you've got these accomplishments. You've done a lot of great things. So when you're beating yourself up at the end of the quarter because it slipped, or at the end of the fiscal, and that ego at 170 decibels is shouting, you're only as good as your last quarter. Like, listen to your intuition, pick up a effing pen and start to write out all the great things that you're grateful for in your career or in that week, or some of the customers you've worked with, and what you've been able to do with them. And it will almost immediately shift your lens to be like, this is just a shitty quarter. That's all it is.
So you have the unique perspective of not only delivering as an individual salesperson, but also coaching a bunch of salespeople. And at the beginning of our show, you mentioned some of the challenge that exists in the kind of in the minds of sales folks, right? It's a hard job, and it does carry some baggage with it.
Oh yeah.
That I think you have to live to understand.
Yep.
Can you expand a little bit around kind of what that baggage of a salesperson and as you're coaching some of the different salespeople you work with and different leaders, how are you helping them separate those the kind of performance-oriented culture from themselves as a person, which I think is maybe the separation.
Yeah, and I think you're right, and I think that's sometimes that's oil and water, and sometimes it's just mud. It's just and it gets muddier and muddier, right? And I think it leads to so much burnout because you're chasing something that it's an external validation. And so when I'm approaching these conversations with a coaching client, especially in sales, not even if they're in sales, I had a coaching client who was a COO at a major bank. I have an active one who's a COO elsewhere at a startup. I have one who's the manager of an LNG desk here in town. I have another one in Los Angeles who's in film and television. Every single one of them I tell the same thing to. You cannot control what happens to you. You can only control how you react. If you distill it down to that simple kind of stoic value, then you can be confident in everything that's outside of your will because it's out of your control. There's nothing you can do about it anyway. And then you can approach everything that's within your will with caution and question it a little bit, not from an ego perspective, but more from a curiosity perspective, and say, is this really where I should be betting my time? Is this really what I want to be doing? And I go back to Stoicism because I read a lot of Stoic philosophy, I think, as you know, and like I remember, I think it was a Marcus Aurelius line in Meditations of like, is this what you're living for? Like, is this why you don't want to die? You're afraid of death because you want to keep doing this? Like, that was kind of the attitude behind it. And I'm like there's such great perspectives in that. So when it comes to salespeople, and you need to kind of be ready, I think, to start having different conversations because you don't feel good in that environment anymore. Maybe that never happens. But with regard to salespeople, I think you need to get to a point where it's like, I I kind of just want to keep making my number and 30%, just have a quiet life and, maybe a couple of toys, but a nice vacation. And I want to do some hobbies and I want to, whatever it is. And you're no longer chasing what everybody else is doing. It's not always just about the stuff, the things. It's about you're really happy with the experience that you're gaining. Then your perspective shifts even further. And now it's like, whatever the rest of the team is doing, that's fine. And if we're taking part in some sort of a team activity, or it's like a team challenge this quarter that who can get the most, meetings for this type of service that we all really want to provide, okay, cool. There's great competitive nature in that in sales. But if I'm doing it because I want to buy the car so that my sales manager is impressed, or that my peers are impressed, or worse yet, what most of us don't realize, I'll show them. I'll go and crush it, and I'll show them. And I'm going to buy the fattest Rolex that I can, right? Yeah. Why are we so concerned with impressing people we don't even like? And that is rampant in sales. This constant of, like, it's almost like a feeling of one-upmanship. Like, we get very defensive, especially as A-type personalities, whether you're an A+ or an A-. I've always said I was like an A- because I don't care as much about the accolades. But for a long time, I really cared about being right, especially with a customer, especially with one that was giving me a lot of pushback, or one that was bottlenecking something, like in procurement. And the last 2 years has really given me a level of perspective and reflection that I can say, this person in procurement that's giving me a really hard time because he wants an extra $2,000 out of this $200,000 PO. Do I really need to be so principled that I'm not, like, is this the hill I want to die on?
Yeah.
He just wants to be seen and heard. He wants to feel like he's doing a good job, or she does, or they do. And I think when you're able to just pause and reflect for a moment, when really maybe toxic or hard stuff shows up, right? Whether that's a deal slipping or hard meeting with your manager, you can put yourself on their side of the table really quick and say, oh, okay, this is a hard conversation for Keith too. He doesn't want to have to reprimand me as his subordinate. So I'm not going to hate on him. I'm just going to be honest with him and be like, look, man, I'm sorry. Here's what's going on with me. Here's where I could use some support. It opens up better conversations.
And I think I love what you said, and I've always believed, like, if you go in with the belief that everyone's just showing up trying to do their best, and whether it's your boss or your customer, yep, or the person in accounting that kind of bugs you,
yeah,
no one goes to work every day and it's like, who I am really going to piss off today? Actually, there probably are some with a.
There might be some. There might be some. I think we know a couple, but.
But I think that if you genuinely have the belief that everyone is they're just trying to do their best, and some people have different motivations, some people have different aspirations, but if you have the belief that people are trying to do their best, and you give them that benefit of the doubt, things become 100 times easier.
Oh, so much easier. So much easier. I think it's like there's a Walt Whitman quote, like, be curious, not judgmental. Yeah. I think that's
also Ted Lasso.
Also Ted
Lasso.
Also Ted Lasso. Ted Lasso. Yeah. We'll give it to Sudeikis, right? Yeah. That's more of the zeitgeist, right? But you're right. Like, I think that's exactly how you described that is, almost assume everybody's just trying to show up to do their best. Everybody's really, we're all in our own head to some extent. We're all trying to be self-aware maybe, but, you're always a little bit weary of how you're being seen. So I think, like, just show up, genuinely try and do your best, and then you've got nothing to worry about.
I love it. I think that there's 100 directions that we could take this, and I think that there's a couple things that I want to give you an award for.
appreciate
this is the longest I think one of these episodes have gone this year.
Is it really?
Without mentioning AI. And so I think.
And speaking of AI,
and so I feel like I probably could have gone the whole episode, but I think that I love the humanness of the conversation we're having. I love that. And it's not about the technology, and regardless of if it's, we took a slight detour into some Microsoft licensing, but
sure.
I think that the work that we do is very human.
Yeah.
And even with some of the technology shifts that are happening, it's the humanness that keeps it really exciting. And so I love the
totally
conversations you're having. I love what you're doing and building. Is there any kind of final thoughts or kind of pieces of wisdom, especially when you think about, maybe Matt from 3 years ago, right? So if you think about right before shit went down,
yeah.
And you could kind of have that conversation with yourself, what words of insight or wisdom or grand revelations would you share with yourself?
I think I would go back to, I would tell myself 3 years ago or 30 years ago to be more mindful at that pause and reflect motion. It's something that, we didn't talk about some major practices or changes that have really caused this shift in me or helped me to shift my perspectives. But one of that is like every day when I get up, like the alarm goes off at 6:30, and then I get up and I do yoga for 5 to 25 minutes, and then I meditate for 20 minutes. And that's not for everybody. Even my coaching clients, I don't say you have to go and do these practices, but my point there is like, find stillness and find quiet reflection. People say, I get that at the gym. No, you fucking don't. You don't. Find some stillness, find some quiet reflection, even if it's a walk. Or, I'm a driver, so sometimes just rowing gears on a back road on a really nice sunny Sunday is great. But those moments where you can kind of get lost in reflection. And if you can do it daily and set an intention to do that, it will change your life. The other aspect is I would have told myself way back then too, in that reflection, to start recording it. I think a lot of people have difficulty. I think a lot of men have difficulty with the act or idea of the act of journaling. And I do it every day. I miss it if I don't. And it helps me so much to process what's going on. Even at the end of the day where it's like, God, I don't feel like it. It's like the gym. I don't feel like doing this because I had a shitty day. I had a frustrating day, or this is kind of eating at me and it's giving me anxiety. As soon as I pick up and start to just write about that, it's complete gibberish. And once I turn the page, it may never see the light of day again. It processes it. So that's what I would put out there is, find those moments of stillness and reflection. Find a way to record it. Always remember, you can't control what happens to you, but you can absolutely control how you react to that.
That's amazing advice. Matt, I feel like we could talk for another 6 hours.
We should do another one of these on AI, because I have a whole talk track on ethical AI that we could approach. I think it would be wonderful.
We could compete with the Jays game from last night. I feel like this will carbon date this episode.
I think so.
Unless there's maybe a longer game tonight. We'll see what happens.
We'll see. We'll see. It's Ohtani's off day. So
yeah, I think he's pitching tonight.
Is he on the mound tonight?
He is pitching tonight.
Oh, you all are screwed.
We've definitely carbon dated this episode. If people want to connect with you, if they want to talk to you about either the services you're offering in Vero, your coaching, take you out for a beer,
sure.
What's the best way for them to get in touch?
There's a number of ways. I'm always on LinkedIn. I know a large part of our audience is on LinkedIn. So I'm just Matt Riddel, MattRiddel is how it's spelled. And then on Instagram, I'm on Insta. I do some content on Insta every once in a while, which is mattyriddel.com. Or at Matty Riddel, sorry. So MattYriddel on Insta. Otherwise, hit me at Enviro. EnviroDigital.com is the website. But my coordinates. Hit me on LinkedIn. Hit me on Instagram. I'm on there. I will respond.
Google me.
I will respond. But there's also access. There will be links to my website for my coaching practice, what that structure looks like, the options I offer for around that, as well as I do a blog. I haven't really touched it in a while. But there's all means to it. There's no shortage of ways to contact me.
If someone wants to get in touch, they would be hard not to find you, is what you're saying.
It would be, yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much. This has been an absolute pleasure and a blast of a conversation.
Oh, it's been an honor. I'm so glad you asked me to do it, and thank you so much for having me, Keith.
Awesome. Until next time.
Awesome.
Awesome. Cheers.
Cheers.
If you've made it this far, like and subscribe on YouTube or follow and leave a review on your favorite podcasting platform so you don't miss any future episodes.